controlling the tension. We were controlling it by saying in a restaurant or with a group or in a moving car. Hey everybody, welcome to this episode of the Jeff Heilman Project. For those of you who don't know, because you only listen on Spotify or Apple Podcast, for the listening listeners, I have a nose ring. Yay!
Yay, that's right.
It's on my right side.
You don't have a baby trying to pull it out 37 times a day.
It's on my right side, which means that you do not get to really see it on YouTube. I hadn't thought about the fact that I sit in the stage left.
Should probably switch seats.
I sit in the right side because you can't see the ring.
I got my fake tooth on the right side.
More often than not, a lot of my stuff that I do is right side forward. I don't know if it's like a better side or not, but it's my more dominant side. So I'm usually on that side for like photos and stuff. Except in this booth, I sit on the other side. I didn't think that through. But anyway, it hurt. Yes, it hurt at the beginning, but it does not hurt now, which on contrary, I had gotten it done before about 7 years ago when we had I just had a baby, and I had to pull it out.
To abort the nose ring.
Because she kept banging it and bopping it, and I don't know.
You were in orbit.
It just wasn't healing, right? Now I can actually touch it, and I'm okay. So shout out to all you
nose ringers.
Nose ring wearers. How has your week been, Mr. Heilman?
Pretty good. What's today? Tuesday? I try to think. It's such a funny thing, right? Because you either start a week maybe on a Sunday or a Monday, and you quit a week on a Thursday or a Friday or a Saturday. And so for you to ask me like midweek, how was my week last week?
I love asking it for you because you bring it, because every time I ask you, you have to say how weird. You have to say how weird it is that I'm asking you.
It's Tuesday. It's Tuesday afternoon.
Yes,
how was your week? All 48 hours of it. No. No, it was good.
We're going Tuesday to Tuesday. So since last Tuesday, how has your week been?
It's been good. It's been good. I'm giving you a hard time, and I appreciate you letting me do that.
Okay.
But yeah, this last week was good. I'm trying to think of is there any memorable things? Like your mom was in town for a couple weeks or a week, and then Jeffrey was in town, and then last week was like the first week that we had nothing.
I think the memorable thing is that
scheduled.
There was a nothing thing.
There was nothing. Yeah, it was the nothing week.
The memorable thing was that there was nothing.
We finished our fiscal quarter and just working through, working through consulting, working through the podcast, working through the newsletter, working through stuff at work. We've got deals. We've got fiscal quarter.
It's not 1,000,000 degrees today.
No, that's nice. Yeah, I'm not sweating in the first 3 minutes of the podcast, which is a benefit.
Well, what we were going to talk about today, and we've never talked about it yet, in how many episodes are we in, Andrew? 6, 7?
Either 79 or 80.
Ooh, 79 or 80.
I think this is 79, right?
Based on how you count it. We've never talked about, and you did such a good job just describing it that I thought that our listeners would benefit from it. I know that our children will benefit from it, but we are actually going to talk about sex before marriage, premarital sex. Maybe not everybody knows, but Jeff and I did not sleep together before we got married.
No,
so
we did not.
We're not trying to go back in a history lesson. We did only get married. We got married in 3 months, so we had a very short engagement, but we did not sleep together until our honeymoon, after we had already been married and gone through the ceremony at the church. And so you had described, you were talking so eloquently that I said, you know what, you should talk about this, because this isn't just a religious thing, because so many people say, well, you shouldn't sleep together before marriage because that's what the Bible says, or that's what Christianity says, or I'm sure, Muslim and Jewish faith and
Muslims
anybody of faith don't sleep together.
Muslims are all for abstinence prior to
abstaining to the wedding night and after the ceremony. But the way that you had described it, and even as we were kids growing up, it was like, it was STDs. It was like diseases. Like if you sleep together before marriage, you're going to get a disease. There was a fear. There's a lot of fear in that.
Yeah.
I liked what you had to say as far as tension and as far as how it creates a tension that needs to exist in order to get to the end. So I'm just hoping that you can kind of recap that so that we can record it and be able to, maybe somebody who's listening or somebody who has people that they're trying to encourage not to let the emotions, because
Yeah.
let's face it, being physical is emotional, and being able to take the emotion out of the courtship or out of the engagement process before going to have the ceremony and being married and united as one.
I think when you think about sex and you think about making a baby or making a deal in business or getting the car that you want or the house that you want or the job that you want or getting through college, I think that tension and friction is part of that relationship between the current state and the future state. And so what I was talking with Madeline about was just that tension is normal. And I think I'd never really looked at it that way, as like one of the reasons why waiting until marriage could be really beneficial. It could be that you get to see how the guy, because typically the guy, right? The guy wants it more than the gal, usually, although I think that there's probably, the jury is out on that. I think that it's not necessarily publicly as acceptable for women
It
to
seems like
admit
the
that they
younger-
like sex and that they're interested in
The
it.
younger,
I don't think they want it any less necessarily.
it seems like the younger the age group, it leans more heavily on the men. And then the older the age group, it leans more heavily on the women, because their biological clock is ticking.
That might be.
They're
Yeah.
also feeling like less
wrong?
desirable. What's wrong with me?
Yeah.
And so it does seem.
Not that we think there's anything wrong, just
No,
for the record. We're not
just-
judging anybody. We're just going through
that whole
case.
cougar thing,
Yeah.
or whatever. And then when you get a younger man and an older woman together, typically things can get really heated very quickly. But we were discussing it.
I think that tension's necessary. I've never done a deal in business that didn't have a lot of tension for a really long period of time, kind of like a marriage, getting up to a contract. The Silicon Valley Bank deal I did in 2022 was 20 months. It was a 20-month courtship. And we broke up a couple times during the engagement. The $10 million deal that I did or the $11 million deal I did at GE in 2015, there was a lot of tension.
Yeah.
Right. The deal that we did at Hawk inside of Danaher, that was like 2 years. And the VideoJet deal was like 9 months, 10 months.
It's funny because you've been in relationships, if we're using sales as a parallel to sex, you've been in relationships in business to where you've had to be on a team that gave it away. And you're like so mad. You're like, we could have gone so far. We could have gotten, another $100,000 out of that deal.
I
like
agree.
what? And here you go, and you're dropping, and they're just telling you, do this, and you're saying yeah, and do this, and drop the price, and drop this, and drop that, and you're just saying yes to everything, and that's both ways. You've seen in your career waiting all the way till the end and having that ceremony and being able to close that deal and have this beautiful ceremony and this climactic event where you have closed the deal. And then you've seen it where, just giving it away and the irritating regret that comes from having given it away.
I don't like giving it away. I didn't like giving away the Silicon Valley Bank deal. I didn't like giving away the deal at First Republic Bank, and they ended up going out of business anyway. The deal that we did at GE, I thought was probably underpriced by quite a bit. And I don't mind, making them feel like a good deal, getting a good deal. I do not like feeling like we got a bad deal. That is the worst. I think there is such thing as a bad deal in business, and I think there's bad marriages where there's just the negotiation doesn't go well.
And a lot of times that's because they haven't been able to be under tension long enough, or they haven't been able to use appropriate response when the tension comes. And a lot of times tension comes, and let's say they're not sleeping together, but tension comes, and then one of them immediately capitulates to something that makes some compromise, they feel like if they stand up for themselves, that the relationship will break up or that they'll go away. So they don't, and they just continue to give in and give in and give in. That there might be a marriage or something one day, and it just takes away all the tension.
And we're not marriage counselors. Like, we're not certified by anybody. We didn't go to school for this. We've just been married a really long time, and we feel like there's certain principles. I was having a discussion with a very close personal friend of mine in the marriage situation, and I had to it got a little heated because the conversation was like, you don't understand, what's really going on. And I'm like, look, I'm not trying to say I have a crystal ball or I know what the future is going to be. I just know that when I get pressed, I go back to principles. When I get to where I don't know what to do, I'm gonna revert back to what I think are the right types of things. And to say that I'm a principle, a lot of times there's a morality judgment with somebody. Well, this is a principled individual. Well, that's not at all what I'm saying. What I am saying is that I don't really know how to do it and make it work if you don't have principles at the core. And I think the principle of there needing to be some tension in a relationship, there needing to be a little intrigue, a little excitement. I invited you out last night to go out, and you didn't want to go out.
I couldn't, unfortunately.
And you were like, well, why don't you go get a 6-pack of beer and some margarita mix and we'll watch football? And we did that instead. Tonight, I invited you out again. And you were like, I don't want to go out to eat, but I can do Jamba. We walked to Jamba Juice, right? And I think that's natural. That's the natural part of playfulness in a relationship, is to have playful tension. That does not mean you need to be screaming at each other just so you can get to makeup sex. Like, I think those are extremes. And I don't think that that's necessarily, it may not even necessarily be healthy, although some people might say that it is.
Well, let's look at it as if you're boarding an airplane and you want to be in a relationship. You want to be in a relationship that lasts. You're hoping and praying to God that you've found your soulmate. You want to be together forever.
Sure.
That's the journey you're on. That's the hope. And if you're boarding an airplane, and I would like you to explain how tension works as far as getting an airplane up and running, but let's assume...
Airplane won't run without tension between...
Let's assume that every time you have sex before marriage, you're actually landing that airplane, because every time sex is involved, it removes tension. Let's face it. That's its design. That's its purpose.
It does.
There's the goal when doing it, when the birds and the bees and doing it right, it removes tension. And so when there's no tension, you get to relax, and you get to, now when you're married and you get to remove tension and relax, it's as it was designed to be. But please explain to those that are listening about an airplane and how the tension is the best thing for flight.
Well, let's just look at an airplane taking off. An airplane takes off into the wind. Most people would think, well, we're going to take off downwind, right?
It's got to help us.
It's got to help. We need as much help as we can get. But an airplane takes off into the wind. Probably, I would imagine 99.9% of people listening to this podcast right now know that airplanes take off into the wind, but some people may not.
Some don't.
I didn't know that until I went to airplane school.
And you see the little sock flying on the private.
Yeah, you see the sock. The sock isn't there to point the direction. Yeah, it's not the direction you go.
Right.
It's the direction
the wind is going.
The wind is going so that you can go the other way.
Yeah.
But you need a certain amount of resistance for every plane. For a Cessna 172, which is a small, that's like a practice airplane. That's like an airplane that you learn how to fly on with 2 seats. And they're made in the 50s and 60s, and most of them smell like mold and are just beat up because they're the number one, I think, most produced airplane in the world is the Cessna 172. So a Cessna 172 has an airspeed of, I think, a minimum airspeed of like 62 knots. And so if you're going 61 knots, you're not flying. You're crashing. If you have... Well, not if you're going, but if your airspeed, if the speed of the wind blowing over we'll have to look it up for sure. Andrew will hold me accountable to this. It could be 70 knots, it could be 68, but I think it's 62 knots is the minimum airspeed for a Cessna 172 to be able to maintain flight. Well, if you're flying downwind, you've got to go, whatever the speed of the wind is, call it 10 miles an hour, you've got to go 10 plus the 62 to take off, which is 72 knots. Well, in order to get up to 72 knots, you got to go much further down the runway. Effectively, the runway needs to be longer for you to take off going downwind than it would be for you to go where you're already starting at a stopped position. You're already going 10 miles an hour. So it only takes you from 0 to 52 knots to be able to take off if the air is 10 miles an hour in your face. So the resistance of the wind in your face is actually the thing necessary. The tension between that engine driving the airplane forward through the resistance of the wind is the thing that allows the wind to pass over the wings and provide lift. And so just like flying an airplane, just like building a business, just like making a baby or having a baby, I learned something. I don't know if this is true or not. Well, maybe fact checkers out there can help me. But I learned something about babies as they're being birthed head first in the womb, pick up antibodies from the mom. And that cesarean section babies are maybe
They were
lacking
just,
those.
did not have the opportunity to pick up the antibodies. Therefore, in some cases, had proven to show that the immune system
was stronger.
Had been compromised because they did not get to be birthed and pick up all those antibodies on the way. And so they were showing certain like allergic similarities, allergy similarities between a group of clustered babies that had been born by cesarean.
So some of you folks are saying, all right, we get it, tension. You lift weights, you need tension. You fly an airplane, you need tension. What does this have to do with? It's a principle. What do we have to do? What does this have to do with premarital sex? Our belief was that if we could withstand the tension of being in the same room without anybody else around and had a commitment between the two of us that we were not going to sleep together, if we could handle that, even if it was only for 90 days, that it would somehow propel our marriage into a better state, and that we could honor God and our commitment.
And to be able to build within each other the respect that is earned from having the discipline, being able to see that there was an area that is so hard typically to discipline, to be able to show your potential significant other that there is self-discipline involved here. And I love you, and I love you, and I want to spend time with you, but I also love myself enough to have the discipline that's required. And I hope that everybody that's watching or listening would hear us, that we do advocate for premarital counseling, that there should absolutely be. I mean,
there should be some, but by the way, get counseling from somebody you respect.
Yeah. And
like,
hopefully that has a healthy marriage.
Yeah, I wouldn't, like, nothing wrong with divorce counselors, and I'm sure we all learn from mistakes that we go through. I'm not judging anybody. But if I'm a young person in 2024, I'm going to go to a married couple or at least a married person. I prefer getting marriage counseling from the couple themselves. If it's somebody part of your church or just elders or just people that are a little older who've been down that path and who've been through something in their marriage, I think it's going to help.
Yeah.
Because, you're not even going to listen. You're not going to listen. You're goo goo gaga.
Yeah,
you're in love.
you've pretty much already. You're just going to get
you're going to check a box.
The mom's approval or the church's approval before you get married.
But I do think there's something to at least having that voice in the back of your head saying, "Oh, that's right. They said sometimes you might have trouble paying rent," or, "Oh yeah, that's right. Sometimes you go to parties and you drink too much, and you got to behave yourself," and just little things like that are in the back of your mind. When you're going to get married, I think are good.
Well, in premarital counseling, also you'll talk about hopes and dreams and future and like where you think you'll be going.
He wants to have kids. She doesn't. He wants to live in New York. She doesn't. He wants to, have an airplane and she can't fly. You should know these things before you get married.
And also going to see your doctor and making sure that you have all your tests done and your blood work done. Yeah. And there are things to think about outside other than just, because we want you guys, we want everyone to be able to have the most successful start that they possibly can have. And I think that the most successful start you possibly can have is a start that is birthed out of tension. There's always going to be, every seed has to bust through the earth. Every child has to be born through a womb. There's this thing that's called the benefit of life, and the benefit of life comes by way, more often than not, more often always, as a result of tension. And typically things like criminals who rob banks cannot handle the tension of what it's taking. It's taking too long for them to get rich, or this is the shortcut. People who shortcut and try to remove the tension from their lives will typically end up, in some form of prison, whether it's an actual prison or a prison that you've created of your own, that you're not understanding why things are never going your way. And it's typically because you continue to remove the tension or look for ways to remove tension.
Let me flip this. Let me flip the polarity of this call for a minute.
Yeah, no, please. Call. Are we on a call?
This call is kind of a call. Right?
It's okay. You're just so used to making
I'm
it.
on a lot of calls today. This is only one of them. Oh my gosh. So I know. I mean, from the guy's perspective, we see movies about it, right? Guys are in pursuit. They want to get the girl. They want to get her in. They want to get her in bed and get in her pants and all that stuff. But to speak to maybe the unfathomable, impossible, contrary position. Talk about it from a woman's perspective. I mean, you're the one that said, if I'm going to be in a car, it needs to be with you. I mean, if I'm going to be in a car with you, it needs to not be moving. Now, I'm pretty sure you didn't say that because you thought you were going to attack. I was going to attack you.
No.
Talk to me about that.
Yeah, we had an agreement, and the agreement was when we first started dating was, if we're going to,
My vampire teeth.
I'm an incredibly strategic person, and
That's
part
true.
of being strategic is seeing a lot of moves ahead, and I just knew even at 19 years old that, like, given enough time, like, that's the, sleeping together as two healthy 19 and 20-year-old male and female. And, let's also recognize I'd known you for a day when I said
right.
that. So I didn't really
Stunning.
I didn't really know you, I didn't know you were disciplined. I didn't know you had any discipline. I didn't know anything about you. And so
Zero.
So I kind of laid it out, and I said, hey, if we're going to,
Hey, you look like a slobby.
no, it was like, these
Guy
are
with
my,
no
I
discipline.
knew me, and I knew I needed to have boundaries. And so
Yeah.
my boundaries were,
Because you knew I was such an incredible lover.
if we're gonna get together, be alone. We need to either be in groups of people, like we can go out and get to know each other better in a group. Meeting in a restaurant alone. If it was the two of us, we would take separate cars and we'd meet in a restaurant and be there in the restaurant together alone and get to know each other. Or meet in groups and have, like we had Katie and Tina and Mizra. We had a whole group of people that we went out with.
Right.
Or if we were going to be alone, but we wanted to be more like not in a restaurant and not in a group, then we needed to be in a moving car. Like we needed to be going somewhere. And I said that to you. I said, I want to get to know you better, but these are my boundaries, because I know what the end road of two single people, male and female or whatever,
Beautiful single
two
people,
single
I
people
might
getting
add.
together, is there's one place that typically ends up. And
But was that because I was coming at you with my vampire teeth and you were like, get away from me? Or you were like, I know that
I had to set a precedent for anyone that I was going to get to know better in that way. That would have been a blanketed, I could probably write a book that would say, do this. This should be the same. This should be the baseline for everybody. In a restaurant, in a group, or in a moving vehicle, you absolutely have to get to know the other person somehow, but remove the temptation as best as you possibly can. If you can get out of an environment that would be removing the temptation, because you just, it removes the tension. Once you do, it was like containing, it was containing the tension. Being able to control the tension. We were controlling the tension. We were like Philip Petit and the high wire, and like twisting it, and like you can't just have a wire. You have to apply tension, but you have to control that tension, because it can't be too tight, it can't be too loose.
Yeah.
And so in controlling the tension, we were controlling it by saying in a restaurant or with a group or in a moving car. And it was not just because I was for you, it would have been anyone that had come across that I wanted to get to know better. This was the.
I think the point I was trying to make is that the attraction is from both sides.
Absolutely.
It's not just me coming at you with my vampire teeth and you're like, I need to be in a car that's moving with you because I don't trust you, but we're going to date. Like, it wasn't like that.
Yeah, no, and it had nothing to do with not trusting you to be honorable, because I wouldn't have gone out on a date with you if I didn't think you were honorable in the first place. It was more just like, this is a practice, and this is my practice. And so my practice is this. Let's be in a moving car. And as a result, like we stayed awake for 72 hours and we were just, where can we drive to next? We created the gas shortage, by the way. Sorry about that, everybody.
We did. My car got a lot of mileage, but we still spent lots of money in gas.
Had to change the oil after that first week of hanging out because we were just constantly on the move. But we were controlling the tension, and that was what I think that.
Yeah. And I think if you're, I don't know if I've covered this on the podcast before, but Bob, what is Bob's name?
Bob Ross?
No, Bob,
the painter?
The runner from Norman Vincent Peale. It'll come to me.
Okay.
Anyway, we have a former associate. We don't spend much time with him right now, but he was an Olympic alternate for long distance running for like the 10,000 meter Olympics. And when he was trained, he grew up in New York, and he was trained by a track coach at that time in the late 70s, I think, a very old and wise preacher who was actually the preacher that Donald Trump grew up going to Marble Collegiate Church in Manhattan. He was also a speed coach, like a coach for long distance running. We had an associate whose name was Bob that trained under Norman Vincent Peale, the preacher from Marble Collegiate Church. And Dr. Peale said to him one time, Bobby, when you squeeze an orange, what comes out? And he goes, I don't know. Orange juice, I guess. He goes, no, not really. He says, what comes out is whatever's inside. And he says, less than 2% of the people, when they get squeezed, will look at it and go, all right, let's go. We got squeezed. Let's go take a look at the guts of what came out of this orange so that we can analyze what we're doing and try to get better. He says 98% of the people say, ouch, ouch.
That hurts.
That hurts. Let's give me some relief here. And they try to get rid of the pressure. They try to get rid of the tension. And I think, whether you're talking about premarital sex or a business or the guy, I don't know his name yet. He's just starting to get into the media a lot. The founder of NVIDIA. And it's a guy, he always wears his black leather jacket. And he just seems like a really cool dude. But he was doing an interview on LinkedIn, I think, maybe 6 months ago. And he was talking about how, would you do it over again? And he says, I would never wish what I had to go through to build this business. I mean, it's $1 trillion business that's only been around 20 years, like half the time of the other $1 trillion businesses. But they're doing work in AI on chip and with software, and they're growing really fast. I have some friends that are becoming very wealthy very quickly as W-2 employees at NVIDIA. Mm-hmm. And he basically said, it is impossible to describe how many hundreds of thousands of decisions that I've had to make building this business. And it literally just tears your guts out. And it's hard. He says, even now, it's hard, 16 and 18-hour days sometimes, just doing everything that you can do to just make the most right decisions that you can in any given 24-hour period. And I've tried everything, time management, project management, product management, figuring out ways to scale, and it's still just impossibly difficult every single day. And somehow we survive till the end of the day. And I don't know how we do it, but I would never wish this on my worst enemy because it is so impossibly difficult. And we're talking about one of the richest guys, up-and-coming richest guys in the world with one of the most valuable businesses, and he's been at it 20 years. But, would he trade places with somebody? My position, and I would say this to anybody listening to this from the outside, my position would be no. He wouldn't trade places with anybody because once you've been stretched by that kind of tension, would we ever trade anything for our 7 kids as much as they've stretched us beyond all possible imagination to be able to work 2 jobs or 3 jobs, which I've done for periods of my life, or a full-time corporate job and a side hustle or 2, like, would we trade what we've become as parents from the tension that we've held that line on for almost 30 years? I wouldn't trade any. I would trade all the money I would ever make in my lifetime and gladly die dead broke or greatly in debt if that's what it took to make sure that I got to experience what it was like to have 7 kids, to be able to do 6 exits, working on a 7th, to be able to feel what it's like to build a $1 billion business sitting on IKEA chairs that we put together ourselves with our little Allen wrenches, and working in an office that doesn't have very good air conditioning flow with walls that are painted the color that we chose down at Home Depot to paint the colors for the company colors. Like, it's the result of having survived through that kind of incredible tension day after day after day after year after year after decade of putting ourselves in the crucible of impossible circumstances and maxing out our credit, having cars repossessed, being laid off and being fired because I'm trying to do the best job I can, and there's a middle management layer that doesn't want to be exposed, really, is what I'm finding more than anything else. It's not that they don't like me, it's that I'm going to go and put a police searchlight right in the middle of whatever the problem is because that's how I'm going to find a solution for it. And they're like, no, turn the lights out. We don't want people to see. And they start scattering like cockroaches. Like, that has been the story of my life, is dealing with the pressure and the resistance of trying to do something at a world-class level in every job, at every company, in every startup, to the best of my ability until I can't even, I'm so tired at the end of every day that I can't even sleep because I'm so tired. I can't get my body to relax enough to actually go to sleep. Like, would I trade the yield from that of being mentally tough, calm under fire, excited about results, able to scale, hopefully a little bit funny and not too serious and stressed out all the time, to have 7 kids, to have a great marriage after almost 30 years, to be physically fit because I'm going to the gym on my Monday, Wednesday, Friday from 2:30 to 4 time slot. Like, I would not trade anything for that feeling of what we've become.
Well, it
by
makes me
being
think of
disciplined
that,
like that.
you know, I used to love that analogy of the rubber band being pulled back
Oh
and the
my
further
God.
and further
Yeah.
and further, because people are like, how long am I gonna have to?
I know.
It's just like, I just imagine that, you're almost there. He's got the rubber band is gonna let go and you're gonna fly so far and so high. Maybe you can speak on, gosh, you know his name. I shared with you the Instagram reel, and maybe you could just kind of talk about how he described that successful people are just like see themselves as a lot closer, because if you see it as being further away, then it's just going to keep being
it was,
further and
Ed
further away.
Milet.
Yeah,
Ed Milet, which, he's a little tough for me to look at, but his wisdom is super smart. He's made hundreds of millions of dollars.
What did
He's
he make
super
his
ripped
money
guy.
in?
I think multi-level.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But he was talking about how he says once you get it through your head that you're one key connection away, one phone call away, one
Your rubber band's
contract
right
away,
about
you're right
to
about to
let
snap,
go.
and
Yeah.
you're like one contract, one deal, one job change. You are one job change away from an entirely different life. He says once you get it to that point, you're going to start looking for those fulcrums, right? And that's the newsletter that we'll be putting out here in the next couple of weeks, the Forge and the Fulcrum. And we finally got a name for it, which makes sense. And now I can call it something. So I've got a project. But if I go through and look and just do a little quick shot on my paper, 1994, I'll just go by 4 years, 2000 to 04, 08, 2012, 2016, 2020, and 2024. I would say that I had a monumental shift in my thinking when I met Christopher Johnson in September of 1994. 95, I had a monumental shift in tech by working for the Musk brothers. 96, I had a monumental shift meeting you and getting married. 97, having a baby. And then 98, 99, 2000, I had a monumental shift in 2000, moving into technology sales. That was amazing. 2001 to the newspaper route. that was monumental just because I'd never worked 100-hour weeks before. And I was like, oh, I can do this and not die. This is great.
Well, I just loved how he said, like, if you continue to see it as never turning, if you continue to see it super far away and super far out there,
then you're going to always be in a position where you're still waiting for the next thing.
Then it's just going to always be forever away. But if you begin to change that mental shift to this, the whole part of the reason why you and I worked is because I saw it as being, this is the one. Like it wasn't going to be another. Just the next guy. Oh, it's just the next guy that's going to be a horrible failure, and not the next. No, this one's the one.
I saw you as being a monumental shift. Also, I saw that through prayer and through meditation. That I saw that I really wanted to be married, and I wanted to have children, and I wanted to build something.
So just imagine going through your life thinking the next guy is the guy I'm going to marry, or the next girl is the girl I'm going to marry, or the next business is the one that's going to win.
The next job you're going to get, you're going to be able to make $200,000, $300,000, $400,000
how would you handle
a year.
it differently if you began to speak? The next is the one.
That's right.
So with that, everybody, we hope that the next podcast is the one that you sign up and subscribe to.
We hope this podcast did something for you. Yeah.
And that you tell all your friends.
You can subscribe to this one if you want to.
We're only one viral video away.
We're only one viral video. We're only one reel away. By the way, Andrew, let me ask you before we close here, how are our reels doing?
How are they doing?
They're doing okay. They're averaging maybe 400, 500 views per upload.
That's pretty great.
It's something.
Better than 100. It was 100 6 months ago, so.
Progress. But the next one is going to go viral.
The next one will go viral. If we stand on our head or show off a pet turtle or something. I don't know.
Anyways, God bless you guys. Have an awesome week. We'll see you next time on the Jeff Heilman Project. Bye-bye.